It is a distinct honor to be with you. What an amazing space you have here. Congratulations to the architect who came up with this and for this beautiful space that you enjoy Rotary in. What a pleasure to be here. So what we're going to talk about for the next 20 minutes or so is the Recovery Community Network. And I think somebody back in the back of the house is kind of monitoring my level of volume. So am I good so far? All right. And then just give me the subtle, like you've got 3 minutes left, 2 minutes left, and then the slash across the throat when before you bring the hook out and take me off the stage. I'm a person in long-term recovery. What that means to me is it has been over 43 years since I've had a drink or a drug. Now, some of you are probably looking at me thinking, well, there's no way in heck this guy could be sober for 43 years. One, he looks too young, and two, he's too darn good looking. But the truth is, I sobered up when I was 15, and kind of a product of the late 60s and 70s, but found recovery very, very early in life and have maintained sobriety and abstinence ever since then. And so what recovery means to me is it has allowed me to have a successful 27-year career in the military. It allowed me to get my bachelor's degree from St. Cloud State University, go Huskies. It allowed me to get my master's degree in education and counseling from Boston University. It has allowed me to be married over 20 years. It has allowed me to have a daughter who has given us and blessed us with 3 beautiful grandchildren. And so I've had all of these blessings come into my life because of recovery. What I want to talk to you today about is the Recovery Community Network, and we are a recovery community organization. What does that mean? We are a grassroots organization devoted to providing services to people who are looking for recovery or are in recovery. And so we provide services on a full continuum. Somebody who comes up and is curious about recovery, maybe wants information about self-help meetings, maybe somebody who has a friend, a spouse, a brother, a sister whose drug or alcohol use they're concerned about. And then on the other end of the continuum, somebody comes up to us and says, I'm hurting, I need help right now, and we would find them an appropriate inpatient or outpatient treatment program to address their concerns. What we're going to go through is just basically an overview of the program. So there's the team. We have 6 whole members on the team, including myself, my assistant director, Cynthia Magallanes, and actually I'll be stepping down at the end of this year and Cynthia will be taking over. We were funded through the federal government, and that money comes down to the state, and then the state further appropriates it. But we were given specific help and financial funding to provide services to our veterans. Veterans are seen as an underserved population. And for those of you, I know I was speaking to one proud Marine here. I'm sure there's others here who have connections to the military. If you continue to follow the stories, we're not doing very well when it comes to military and veteran suicide. The most recent statistics put out by the Army about suicides in the active duty Army for 2021 is it reached an all-time high. And when you take a look at the psychological autopsy of somebody who has taken their life, oftentimes drugs and alcohol have played a negative role in it. And so we received funding from the state to specifically provide services to our veteran and service member population. That's what Jeannie Holefield provides for us. AmeriCorps, anybody here familiar with AmeriCorps, heard of the program? So Vista, Reading and Math Corps, very, very popular programs. And they now have what they call, it's a further dissemination of those programs, something called AmeriCorps' Recovery Corps. And for the total cost of $5,000, we get somebody who will work for us in our office 40 hours a week, best deal in town. And so this person works with us in terms of building capacity, reaching out to different segments of our population, and letting them know about the services that we offer. Oh, by the way, absolutely free of charge. They don't have to fill out any paperwork when they come in. They don't have to fill out any insurance forms. They don't have to provide any kind of proof that they are unemployed. If they have a problem, if they want information about recovery, we provide it to them free of charge. And then we have two gentlemen on our staff who provide peer-to-peer services, and this is really important. They are certified peer recovery specialists, CPRS, certified peer recovery specialists. And what this is one-on-one lived experience. Some of you might be familiar with programs like Narcotics Anonymous or Alcoholics Anonymous, and they talk about sponsors a lot. A certified peer recovery specialist is not a sponsor. Sponsors will work with people on the literature of the program, like the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, helping them get to meetings, going through the 12 steps. But a certified peer recovery specialist is going to do all of that kind of wraparound services. The person might be looking for employment. We'll help them with employment. Perhaps one of the gentlemen came to us and said, I haven't been in the workforce for 20 years. I don't even have a resume. We started, let's build your resume. And then we'll build some interview skills, and then we'll start looking for some jobs. Some of our people come to us and say, I've got social anxiety disorder, and being in big recovery rooms is just uncomfortable to me. We will provide one-on-one services. Some of our people are homebound and they're unable to get out to self-help meetings. We'll provide them a Zoom meeting. So we provide everything that a sponsor is not doing. We call those wraparound services, and that's what these two gentlemen do very well. Certified peer recovery specialists. And I say certified because they have gone through a specific training to learn these skills and then have to for a test that is administered by the state of Minnesota. So our mission, we're dedicated to mobilizing resources within and outside of the recovery community to increase the prevalence of and access to recovery from substance use disorders. Addressing stigma. So one of the things that we have been dealing with for years and years and years and years is stigma. And today, I'm happy to say that many people are doing what we call recovering out loud. And here are some notable people. Denzel Washington is a person in long-term recovery. Ava Mendez and the great Mickey Mantle. Now, it may be kind of hard to read that, so I'm just going to go through his career really quick. 18-year career, 3 times Major League Baseball MVP, 7 times on a World Series championship team, 2,415 hits, 536 home runs, and was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. Now that's an amazing career. But according to Mickey Mantle, his greatest achievement is being sober. Gary Oldman, a great actor. Jason Bateman, if there's any Ozark fans out there, is a person in long recovery, as well as Robert Downey Jr. And just recently, last year, I testified in front of a subcommittee of our House of Representatives at the state level about recovery and providing services to the recovery community in Minnesota. Kind of a historical timeline of our organization. So we started off in 2014 just with the idea of, hey, if we could pool some resources and share information with one another about recovery activities. Again, dealing with stigma, people were kind of afraid to say, I'm in recovery, or there's this workshop going on, or there's this training going on. And all we wanted to do was to publish the agenda, just share information. And that's where we focused for the first 2 years. We did that through having a monthly meeting with service providers and people who were in recovery, as well as through social media. In 2017, we had a community convening. We called it a World Cafe. And out of that, we asked the audience, what do you think would be helpful for this greater central Minnesota area? And one of the things that they identified was, we need a place where we can go and we can get information about recovery free of charge, no questions asked. From that, and as a mentor of mine in the military used to say, no job is too big for those who don't have to do the work. Well, we're like, well, that's a great idea, but now we have to go about and find the funding and find the place and get a 501c3 and a board of directors and the bylaws and the articles of incorporation. And if any of you have ever been through that process, you know it's rather laborious and tedious. I got a few heads over here going north and south. Okay. So while we were working on that, we had our first Recovery Coach Academy in 2018. That's this workshop that provides the skills to allow somebody to be a certified peer recovery specialist. And then after that training, they can sit for the state certified exam. In 2019, we were successful in getting our 501c3 and our first funding from the state of Minnesota. In 2020, we became a member of ARCO, and ARCO is a nationally recognized organization. They have their office out in DC, and then they will go in and take a look at your program when you petition them to do so. And if you get the ARCO good stamp of approval, it means that you are doing best practices in the field of recovery. We received that distinction in 2020. In 2021, we received our funding for our veteran community. And in 2022, we just received funding from emergency medical services in the central Minnesota area to provide further services to healthcare providers, specifically in this area of peer recovery specialists. Some of the services that we provide, recovery newsletter. So I have a database of just about 6,000 names. These are people who are in recovery. These are providers of recovery services. And we send out newsletters to them on a monthly basis. And again, it's just publishing information about recovery. Where are the workshops? What's going on? What news is available? We also have what I call the VIR, Veterans in Recovery newsletter. And I have a database of over 1,500 veterans and providers of services to the veteran community. And we send out a newsletter to them. We have a robust social media presence. We're on Facebook, we are on Twitter, we're on Instagram, we're on LinkedIn, and we provide information about recovery in all of those forums. We continue to have our monthly RCN meetings where we invite in people like yourselves, people who have a dog in the fight of recovery, people who are in recovery, a service provider in recovery. And again, we do this for the purpose of publishing the agenda, making sure that people are aware of the recovery services that are out there. We also are a friend to our local self-help meetings. We have 8 self-help meetings that are held at our location on a weekly basis. We provide tours. Because I was in the military, I had to come up with an acronym for it. It stands for Telephone Online Recovery Services. And so for people, especially during COVID, we had to ramp that program up because people were in recovery, were really having a hard time that they weren't able to have that face-to-face contact, that human contact that's so important for building recovery. And so we ramped up a program where we provide telephone calls in a telehealth manner. And then our peer-to-peer services is that one-to-one counseling. Forgive me, back up. We don't provide counseling. We are not counselors. I want to stress that we are not counselors. We are people who have lived experience with recovery. We are people who have been there, done that, and we share that experience with somebody else, and we provide that peer-to-peer help. One of the other things that we do is recognize milestones in recovery. For example, there was a member of the Air Force who was from the central Minnesota area, who was a great humanitarian, very passionate about recovery. And he passed here a couple of years ago. His widow came up to us and said, I want to do something in honor of my husband so that he will be remembered and that his work in recovery will be carried on. And so we instituted the Chief Master Sergeant Russ Hobbighorst Humanitarian Award. And that is given to a veteran in recovery every year who has been instrumental and outstanding in carrying the message of recovery to other veterans. We also have implemented and instituted the Venerable Order of Talbot, and we present that award to people who are in recovery or provider of recovery services who have made a significant contribution to recovery. The self-help meetings that I mentioned earlier, these are just some of them that meet in our facility. And so the idea is that somebody could come to us for help, get the information that they need, and then stick around and later in the evening when we have a self-help meeting that would be in their particular vein or like or genre. There's AA meetings, there's Smart Recovery, which is based on cognitive behavioral therapy. Sober Squad, which is taking off like wildfire. That was instituted by 2 Native Americans in the central Minnesota area. They now have over 25 chapters across the United States. You can find Sober Squad meetings in 17 of our 50 states. And basically what it was saying is that the program of Alcoholics Anonymous is kind of seeped in Caucasian culture. And it really wasn't resonating with the Native American culture. And they said, it's really good information, but we want to put a Native American twist to it. So they do smudging, the burning of sage during it. They have some prayers that they do in their native language. And then after that, it looks just like an AA meeting. But it has really resonated with the Native community. And again, it is in 17 states now. Started by 2 guys that live just miles from here. And then we also have a post-treatment aftercare group. And for some people, let me just talk about the difference between treatment and recovery. So treatment is like emergency care, your traditional 30-day program. Recovery is that kind of like post-op, where you would go back and you see your doctor for periodic checkups. And that is so important for people in recovery. We know that between 0 to 60 months, a person is at high risk for relapse. But if we can get them to month 61, they stand a significantly higher chance of maintaining long-term recovery. And so that's where we focus on those first 5 years, because things like divorce, promotion, demotion, moving, you name it, anything that life can throw at you. And when you're early in recovery, those events can be triggers to going back to the substance. And so we work with them specifically in those first 5 years to help build their recovery capital, to get them a firm foundation of recovery so that they can have long-term recovery and not have to go back through treatment and back through treatment and back through treatment. I've already spoken about our telephone online recovery services. These are free. People sign up for these. They send us in these flyers. They just go into our database. And then once a week, they'll get a phone call. Conversation goes like this. Hi, this is the Recovery Community Network. John speaking. I'm just checking in on your recovery. Now, for those of you who maybe have gone through a smoking cessation program or a weight loss program, you know the buddy system is effective. There's an accountability there, somebody to check on my progress. That's what we're doing with our TORS program, Telephone Online Recovery Services. Somebody calls you up once a week and just checks on your recovery. Most of the conversations go like this: I'm doing fine, thank you. But occasionally we'll get something like, you know what? I just found that I have to put my pet down. And this has been my pet for the last 10 years, and this is really hard. And then we can start providing some additional resources to get that person through what might be a trigger or a cue to go back to using. We also provide housing support, and we know that say there was somebody who was homeless, and they go to a treatment program, and they learn how to be sober. They learn the tools of sobriety. But then they get released from the hospital and they're back homeless. We really haven't addressed one of the major problems to their substance abuse. So these wraparound services are so vital to continuing to build that recovery capital. So we work with individuals who have housing barriers, such as maybe they've got a criminal history that is preventing them, We will work with the landlords to see if they can make an exception to policy or if they will take this person on. We work with other resources. We help fill out the paperwork for HRA and other subsidy programs that the person might be eligible. So we're addressing some of those, basic needs, the needs that, Maslow rather identified so long ago, food, clothing, and shelter. And if shelter isn't addressed, we're just setting the person up for failure. And some of the information that we share with people in recovery are upcoming events. And one of the things that is coming up here, and thank you, in just a few minutes, or just a few days, I've got 3 minutes, but just a few days is there's a roundup in Staples. The big daddy of roundups of AA recovery is the Go for State roundup, which is held every Memorial Day weekend. 7,000 people in recovery will attend that. And then there's an annual camp out at up at Crow Wing. And this is the kind of information that we consistently and constantly push out to people to let them know that there's more to recovery than just sitting in a meeting and drinking coffee. What we're trying to do is create value through alignment. As you can see at the top of that, you've got all these programs that are going crisscross, the classic silos of excellence, the classic left hand not knowing what the right is doing. What we're trying to do is to get that at the bottom arrow, right, where we're all going in the same direction, and we're augmented by the faith community, by volunteers, by colleges, by consultants, and so that we're all working on an agenda of trying to build recovery capital. And what we can do when we are aligned, both federally and locally, regionally and at the state level, is to build a solid box and a firm foundation for recovery. If any of you are so inclined, there are ways to be involved. Peer-to-peer services, we're going to be putting on one of those workshops that I talked about earlier. That is going to be going on 13 to 17 June in St. Cloud. We have a recovery 5K that we do every year, a recovery banquet. There's opportunities for corporate sponsorship. And this is how you can reach us, recoverycommunitynetwork.com, all one word, spelled just like it sounds, recoverycommunitynetwork.com, our telephone number, and our Gmail account, recoverycommunitynetwork@gmail.com. And pending your questions, that concludes my report. Yes, sir.
Yes, when I was on active duty, we had so we all had to go to a course, this week-long course on the physiology of addiction. And it really opens your eyes as to basically you're basically a pharmacist if you're having a party. You got to understand what the results of what you're going to be serving or whatever. Is that available anyplace? Do you have anything like that?
Yes, as a matter of fact. So if you didn't hear that question, my Marine here talked about a course that he went through as a member of the armed forces that was a week-long course about substance use and addiction. And it had a lot of the physiological kind of, if I might say, biochemical components of it, because it really is a brain disease. And the answer to your question is our Recovery Coach Academy. We cover that material extensively in it. So if you're a person in recovery over 1 year of service, 1 year of recovery, 13 to 17 June, and we have scholarships that are available for that. And if you're a veteran in recovery, it's absolutely free.
Can anybody hear me out there?
Just need to know that kind of information just in general so they can understand what the situation, the problems are.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of our big components is education and advocacy, constantly putting out information out there to lower that stigma that this really is a brain disease, people. It's amazing when you take a look at what happens at the neural level to the brain of somebody who has an addiction problem. It's a disease. It's a disease like cancer. It's a disease like diabetes. They didn't get that way because they were dropped on their head when they were young, or their mom wasn't emotionally present, or dad left. It's just biochemistry.
Any other questions out there?
Thank you for your time and
Can
attention.
anybody hear me? Can anybody hear me out there?
So, and as I mentioned
anybody
earlier,
hear me?
I've been asked to pull a name out.
Jesse,
And I'd
can you
also
hear
like
me?
to give a copy of my book to the winner. So that person is Rod or Rachel Carlson.
Rod Carlson.
Rod
There he
Carlson.
is.
Rod?
Come on up, Rod.
Thank you very much, John. It's important work. Thank you for being here today, and thank you for what you do.
My pleasure.
Can anybody hear me out there?
I hear you, Rod, but I don't think anybody else does.
All right, okay. I want to make some comments, but
We've got a message here. Ron, I'm glad to hear you're out there. I wasn't sure if you were on the call today. Ron's got a message. Happy dollar heart procedure in hospital was successful, and I'll return to Minnesota next week. I'm glad to hear you're on the call. Thank you for lining up these great programs. We've had some really great programs this year, including John today. So thanks for what you're doing, Ron.
thank you.
Wilson Rotary, R-O-T-A-R-Y, that's Dallas Rotary. R-O-T-A-R-Y, it's not dependency. From north to south, from east to west, white prophets, ghosts, who serves the best. R-O-T-A-R-Y, that's Dallas Rotary.